Russian troops have launched 5 missile strikes, 19 airstrikes and fired multiple launcher rocket systems 30 times. 24 combat clashes took place in Ukraine over the course of the past 24 hours. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Information is of 1800 on the 29th of July. Details: Russian troops launched 5 missile, 19 airstrikes and attacked 30 times using multiple launcher rocket systems on the positions of Ukrainian troops and the settlements during the day. There are injured civilians, and destruction of houses is observed. 24 combat clashes occurred over the past 24 hours. The operational situation on the Volyn and Politia fronts remains much the same as before. No evidence of offensive group formation has been reported. On the Severshina and Slobozhanshina fronts, Russian forces deployed mortars and artillery to attack more than 15 settlements, including Mykolaievka, Chernihiv Oblast, Stara Huta, Rybovsky, Volfin, Sumy Oblast, Udy, Okremivka, Ohertsev and Tyk, Kharkiv Oblast. On the Kupiansk front, Vorokna, Zapadna, Kindrashivka and Kupiansk, Kharkiv Oblast came under Russian artillery and mortar fire. On the Lyman front, the Russian troops held offensive actions in the area of Novoihorivka and the settlement of Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, but to no avail. The Russians deployed artillery to attack the settlements of Nevsky and Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, and Verkhnekamiansk, Spern and Rozdalivka in Donetsk Oblast. On the Bakhmut front, more than 10 settlements, including Bodanivka, Chasev Yar, Ivanovsky and Bila Hora, came under Russian artillery fire. On the Avdiivka front, the Ukrainian armed forces successfully repelled Russian attacks near Avdiivka while under heavy fire from Russian aircraft and artillery. More than 10 settlements, including Avdiivka, Pervomaisk, Karlivka, and Novokulinov Donetsk Oblast came under artillery fire. On the Marinka front, the Ukrainian defense forces continue holding back the Russian offensive in the area of the city of Marinka. The Russian army fired on more than 10 settlements, particularly Krasnohorivka, Marinka, Novomykhailivka, Pobeda and Hyorhivka Donetsk Oblast. On the Shakhtarsk front, the Russian troops launched airstrikes in the area of Makarivka and Staromyorsk, and attacked Odradna, Blahodatna, Makarivka, Rivnopil and Staromyorsk Donetsk Oblast. On the Zaporizhia and Kherson front, the Russian forces are focusing their primary efforts on preventing the further advance of Ukrainian troops. The Russians carried out airstrikes in the area of Orikhiv, Zaporizhia Oblast, and Antonivka, Kherson Oblast. Over 25 settlements came under artillery fire, particularly Novodorivka, Molotokmichka, Bilahirya, Kamiansk, Zaporizhia Oblast, Zolota Balka, Tokarivka, Antonivka, Mykhailivka, Kherson Oblast. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian defense forces maintain their offensive on the Melitopol and Berdyansk fronts and consolidate their positions. The Ukrainian Air Force launched 5 airstrikes on the clusters of Russian personnel, weapons and military equipment over the past 24 hours. Ukrainian defenders also destroyed a tactical reconnaissance UAV. Ukrainian rocket forces and artillery destroyed 1 Russian artillery piece at firing positions, 1 electronic warfare system, and 1 cluster of Russian manpower. Ukrainian defenders strike 10 clusters of Russian military manpower, General Staff report. 36 combat clashes took place at the front over the past day, and Ukrainian defenders hit 10 clusters where Russian manpower was concentrated. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 6 o'clock on the 30th of July. Quote, "The Russian Federation continues to wage a war of aggression, despite significant losses. The enemy continues to kill the civilian population of Ukraine, and continues to ignore the laws and customs of war, using terror tactics." Details: During the past 24 hours, the Russian occupiers carried out 8 missile strikes, 33 airstrikes and launched 53 attacks using multiple launch rocket systems on the positions of Ukrainian troops and settlements. There were casualties among the civilian population, and residential buildings were destroyed. There were 36 combat clashes over the past day. On the Severshina and Slobozhanshina fronts, the Russians carried out mortar and artillery attacks on more than 20 settlements, in particular, Mykolaievka, Chernihiv Oblast, Stara Huta, Rybovsky, Budaveln and Volfin, Sumy Oblast, and Udy, Kazaka Lopan, Okremivka, Ohertsev and Tyk, Kharkiv Oblast. On the Kupiansk front, Topoly, Vorokna, Zapadna, Kyslivka, Berestov, Kindrashivka and Kupiansk in Kharkiv Oblast came under Russian artillery and mortar fire. On the Lyman front, the Russian troops conducted unsuccessful offensive operations in the areas of Novoihorivka and Bilohorivka in Luhansk Oblast. The settlements of Nevsky, Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, and Verkhnekamiansk, Torsky, Spern and Rozdolivka, Donetsk Oblast were hit by artillery fire. On the Bakhmut front, more than 15 settlements were affected by Russian artillery fire, including Orikovo-Vasilivka, Bodanivka, Chasiv Yar, Ivanovsky, Bilahora and Druzhba. On the Avdiivka front, Russian troops launched an airstrike near Nevelsky. More than 10 settlements, including Avdiivka, Severn, Pervomaysk, Karlivka, and Novokulinov in Donetsk Oblast, were hit by artillery fire. On the Marinka front, the Ukrainian defense forces continue to hold back the Russian offensive in the area of the city of Marinka. The Russian army launched an airstrike in the area of Krasnohorivka and fired on over 15 settlements, particularly Krasnohorivka, Marinka, Novomykhailivka and Hyorhivka in Donetsk Oblast. On the Shakhtarsk front, the Russian troops launched airstrikes in the areas of Makarivka and Staromayorsk and struck the settlements of Yelizavetivka, Odradna, Blahodatna, Makarivka, Rivnopil, Staromayorsk and Vilnpol in Donetsk Oblast. On the Zaporizhia and Kherson fronts, the Russian forces are focusing their primary efforts on preventing the further advance of Ukrainian troops. The Russian forces launched airstrikes in the areas of Malotokhmichka and Orikhiv in Zaporizhia Oblast and Antonivka in Kherson Oblast. More than 30 settlements came under Russian fire, including Novodorivka, Malotokhmichka, Bilahiria, Mali Sherbaki and Kamiansk in Zaporizhia Oblast, and Zoloda Balka, Tokarivka, Antonivka, Tyainka and Mykhailivka in Kherson Oblast. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian defense forces are maintaining their offensive on the Melitopol and Berdyansk fronts, consolidating their positions. The Ukrainian Air Force launched 9 airstrikes on clusters of Russian personnel, weapons and military equipment over the past 24 hours. Ukrainian defenders also destroyed 4 operational tactical reconnaissance UAVs. Ukrainian rocket forces and artillery destroyed 1 Russian artillery piece at its firing position, an ammunition storage point, 1 electronic warfare system, and 1 cluster of Russian military manpower. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces reported on July 30 that Russia has lost 245,700 troops in Ukraine since February 24 last year. This number includes 480 casualties suffered by Russian forces over the past day.